There has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michelle Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Episode 220. It's just science. Plant-based eating, plant-based Cambridge, and the climate emergency. Welcome back, my Vedge Your besties. Today's episode was an interview recorded a couple of days before the recent November 5th U.S. elections. Maybe you read about those. As we anticipate a second Trump administration in 2025, among the many concerns many of us have is a second term of disinterest in climate emergency, including withdrawal from the Paris Agreement and lack of engagement with COP initiatives. And as recently as November 3rd, the president-elect announced that climate change is a hoax. So, in light of these concerns, today's episode is, well, let's go with timely and relevant. Without a lot of leadership expected on the part of the U.S. from a political perspective, we're talking student activism and institutional change with student William Smith from Plant-Based Cambridge, one of the member universities of plantbaseduniversities.org. William is a PhD student in climate science at the University of Cambridge and a campaigner for Plant-Based Cambridge, the student-led initiative working to transition university catering to 100% plant-based options. We'll discuss the motivations behind this movement, how our food choices impact climate change, and how it's inspiring change across campuses in the UK and beyond. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation about the role of universities, about young people stepping up to show leadership, learning what goes into leadership, and the importance of open conversations as a strategy for a more sustainable future, regardless of the upcoming political climate. I'll see you on the other side. William Smith, campaigner for Plant-Based Cambridge. Welcome to Vedge Your Best.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited that we're getting a chance to speak with you. I don't know if you volunteered or if you were volunteered to speak to us about the work that gets done with Plant-Based Cambridge and plant-based universities, but I'm delighted you're here. And I'd like you to tell me, first of all, what is Plant-Based Cambridge?
So Plant-Based Cambridge, it's kind of the Cambridge arm of plant-based universities, which is it's grassroots, student-led environmental campaign. So the idea behind plant-based universities is that universities are kind of producing this research that's saying how bad animal agriculture is for the environment. And so we believe that universities should be leaders in a plant-based transition, essentially by making all of their internal catering 100% plant-based. So there are campaigns. It started out in the UK in 2021 at University College London, and it's now, I think, about 80 universities across the UK and mainland Europe. So it's spread very quickly. The Cambridge Student Union voted in favour of our motion to make university catering 100% plant-based. And then similar votes have happened at other UK universities, and there's recently been one in Austria as well. The universities have always been leaders in social change, and they should continue to do that and act on their own research.
So tell me, so you are a student at Cambridge?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a quick synopsis of what you study and also how you came to care about plant-based choices?
Yeah, so they're kind of related. So I'm a PhD student in climate science. My undergrad was in natural sciences at Nottingham, at the University of Nottingham. I did a master's in mathematical modelling and climate science at the University of Exeter, and then came to Cambridge to do a PhD. I was raised pescatarian, so I've kind of always been vaguely aware of we should be doing something to reduce the amount of meat. My parents are both pescatarian for ethical reasons, which can debate whether or not pescatarianism is a actually ethically sound stance. But then when I was 17, I went vegetarian and then eventually vegan as well. I guess I've always cared about the environment a little bit, maybe, but at some point I decided that was going to be my career. I don't really remember making that decision. I remember being at Cambridge, I was the green officer for my college. So Cambridge is divided up into colleges and they're all quite independent. And I was the postgraduate green officer. So I was supposed to care about environmental stuff. And I remember sort of thinking how a lot of the stuff that I was doing as green officer and a lot of the other green officers were doing was very kind of didn't have an impact. It was just kind of, oh, we've organized a clothes swap or we're going to plant some flowers or something. It was all like these just little things that didn't really change anything. So I was feeling kind of like disenfranchised with that. But then eventually I saw just on the group chat that the group chat of all of the green officers, someone just sent a message asking if anyone would be interested in this plant-based universities campaign that they were trying to start.
Well, I think that's such an interesting concept that we step forward in some way, in some form of leadership, whether we just kind of get pushed into it a little bit or whether we think, oh, I could be helpful in that situation. And then we don't really know what the needle movers are in those situations.
No.
There you are as a green officer. Are you just making sure all the plastic goes into the recycling bin? Or are you trying to make sure that there's some compost places? Or, and I hear what you're saying, that I think all of us in our own homes, in our own towns, we want to do the right thing. But some things really matter and some things...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I remember I saw a graphic recently that compared how much people think something matters for the climate and how much it actually matters. And things like recycling, people think it's really important, but it actually has a very little effect. Whereas a plant-based diet has a huge effect and most people don't realize how important it is.
And that is such an interesting transition. Why don't you give us an idea based on what you've learned in your capacity as a campaigner for Plant-Based Cambridge and through plant-based universities? Why is it so important to move in a plant-based direction?
Often people kind of present things as problems being really simple and you just need one solution to solve these really big, complicated problems. And that's not really true anywhere in life, I don't think. But a plant-based food system kind of is one of the closest things to that. It's just quite a simple thing. It just fixes so much. So you can talk about something green, switching to renewable energy, that just reduces greenhouse gases. Whereas a plant-based food system, it's about reducing greenhouse gases, it's reducing land use, fresh water use, pesticide use, antibiotic use. Antibiotic resistance is going to be a big problem in the future, but 75% of our antibiotics are given to farm animals. And that just ends up in the soil where all the bacteria are, and those bacteria can develop resistance to antibiotics. And then in the UK, there's a big problem at the moment with our rivers. Sewage companies are just dumping waste into rivers, and people are very upset about that. But what a lot of people don't realize is animal agriculture is a big contributor to that, because you have these huge kind of intensive chicken farms that produce as much waste as a city does, but in a much more concentrated space, and it's not got a sewage system of a city, and it just leaches out into the surrounding environment. And this idea of freeing up the land to sequester carbon as well is a big part of it. And then that's without even mentioning the 80 billion animals that are killed each year by this food system, and it just fixes. And also public health, we would all be much healthier if we ate a lot less meat. It's just, it doesn't solve all the world's problems, but it's just quite a simple thing that doesn't involve any new technology or any kind of radical change of infrastructure, like say a lot of the other solutions to climate change do. It's just quite simple and fixes quite a lot, which is quite rare, I think.
Yeah, it's lovely to have an opportunity to impact something that really matters so much, that ripples through so many parts of our lives. A lot of the listeners to this podcast are people midlife and older, and a lot of us came to a vegan or plant-based lifestyle typically for health or ethical reasons, compassionate animal reasons. And I hear more and more of them, what they say, okay, even if something changed for the ethics, if something changed for the health, for the climate, that's what keeps me thinking about it. But I think for younger people, overwhelmingly, the climate emergency is something that's been very, very cutting through in terms of how your choices matter.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've always kind of thought of them as being related, the ethics and the climate side of it. Like the reason we care about climate change is it's an ethical, like environmentalism is an ethical stance. Like we want to do something about climate change because people and non-human animals are going to die a result and suffer as a result of climate change. So it doesn't really make sense to care about that suffering and not the suffering of animals and farms, is kind of the way I've come to understand it. I'm not really sure if young people care about that more or older people. Or...
When you first got to university, so that you're a PhD student now, but there were probably loads of things that you're exposed to as a first couple years living in university. Your family had a certain ethical stance about food, which many families don't. But what were the kind of the food ideas that you first ran into when you were at university? Do you remember any of them?
So when I started at university, I was vegetarian, and it wasn't kind of until the end of my undergraduate degree that I started to meet vegans and kind of suddenly realized, suddenly found it weird that I wasn't the one who was like had the moral high ground, like compared to meat eaters. It was suddenly them kind of above me and me kind of saying, yeah, I know I'm wrong. But yeah, so I guess that aspect of it as well, like you're not, like it's because the university, you're just suddenly meeting people from all over the country, and it's actually meeting other people. I remember as well having the thought that because at Nottingham there was like a vegetarian and vegan society, and I never joined it because I kind of thought that was a weird thing to kind of make friends over at the time. But like now, I'm currently in the Netherlands, and the way I've made friends is through a vegan society. It's just like a good thing to kind of bond with people, and it's quite funny as well when you're like with these groups of people, like especially these friends in the Netherlands I've been like meeting up with, and you just kind of forget that you're all vegan, and then like every now and again, like someone will offer you some food, and you kind of have the thought, oh, is that vegan? Like, oh, of course it is.
What exists for someone new to university now because of plant-based Cambridge, because of plant-based universities? What exists now for new students to help them lean into some of these different choices, even if they have a lot of resistance to? I mean, I know a lot of people, young people, who don't eat a lot of vegetables, don't eat a lot of legumes, don't eat a lot of the sorts of things that would support their full health if they just get rid of animal products.
So there's been some success in kind of making like individual cafes at universities vegan has kind of been one way we've started doing it. So it's not affected the choices generally, but I think that kind of a big part of the kind of strategy of plant-based universities is that you go in and you ask for 100%. You like go in with these big demands, and then they kind of give you these little things for free. Like if you just go in and just ask for like meat-free Mondays or oat milk by default, then that's all you get. And you have to like fight really hard to get that. Whereas if you just go in with these really big demands and ask for these, people will give you these small ones for free. And also it's just good to have this kind of clear, consistent messaging from the start, in that you have like if you say, oh, we want to just go vegetarian, or like have meat, don't serve meat 3 days a week or something. If you eventually get that and then you want to do better, people will kind of say, oh, but you've we did this already and you said that was good enough. Why do we have to do more now? But I think just having these discussions with the caterers and kind of being in a situation where you're taken seriously, they then will start to kind of think about it more themselves and increase the options, and also talking more about whole foods and that sort of thing, because then that's there's been some research that plant-based universities have been sharing recently about how universities can actually save money if they switch to plant-based catering, and this is mostly based around kind of the legumes and beans, and tofu is much cheaper than chicken and beef and that sort of thing. So it's kind of focusing on that kind of aspect of it as well, that it's not just about the planet, it's also you can save money and the health of the students as well. There's all these other aspects to it.
So that's negotiating 101 is ask for more than you're happy with for this week. And also just to keep reminding the people who are decision makers, in their defense, they're just doing what they've always done and what's always worked to whatever extent. And so I notice this in my life all the time, that you have to keep reminding them, it's not just today you need to solve this problem. For every one today, there's going to be 10 or 15 tomorrow that are coming behind me. We were like the advanced guard asking for these things. We're actually making your life simpler. If you solve it bit by bit today, you won't have to scramble when it's a huge change in a year or 5.
Yeah, and also in that these changes are coming from the students, like they're kind of bottom-up changes rather than top-down, because I think that's very important. Like if just some person on the university board just kind of said, oh, we're going to get rid of meat, like students would kind of kick up a fuss about that. But we've done the communication with the students, like while we've been doing our outreach and while we've been campaigning. So we've kind of gradually introduced them to this idea rather than just someone high up just imposing it overnight. And I think that's a big part of kind of being successful as well, because there are examples of companies that have tried similar initiatives but coming from the top and it doesn't work as well. I think we found. You
recently had in the UK a big election. We're having a huge election right now. I just did my podcast for next week, which comes out election day. I always try to remind myself that no matter how we feel about any given election, we have so much control every single day with our choice. We are constantly voting, and it's really very important for us to remember how to vote with our energy and our attention, our focus, the dollars we do have, the community that we do have. So how does plant-based universities and plant-based Cambridge, how do they help students get really aware of what their choices are in this area?
You're entirely right there. Like democracy isn't just about ballots. They say it's about time and attention. Like I think we were the second university to pass a motion, and now we've got this. We're like trialing the catering services are now trialing this vegan cafe as well. So we're kind of figuring out how you actually implement this, and then all that we learn is then going to go on to the other campaigns as well, so that their time can be used more usefully as well when they come. So I think in terms of just when a student wants to, like, is in a similar position to me, like I was, of feeling that they need to make change, have a lasting impact. It kind of provides the opportunity to do that, I think. And then that's, I say, how you spend your time and attention is kind of one of the most important things that you have to spend.
And to help each other learn in slightly different environments. I'm assuming different parts of the country, different demographics, different ages of kids, or different programs. Where I'm sure some of your universities are more political than others. Some are. At least that's true. At least that's true in this country.
Definitely. So in the UK, it's relatively standardized, and that all universities have these like student unions, so that the first step in any campaign is to get the kind of, well, first you kind of recruit people, then you kind of get signatures, and then you go to the student union and have a vote. It's kind of the first kind of step that can like be a win or a loss and that sort of thing. But then that completely goes out the window when you step into Europe and they don't have student unions, and you have to figure out, well, what's the similar equivalent. So yeah, the University of Graz in Austria has been the first one to have a vote, and yeah, the campaign there has been so impressive. There's a whole campaign in Europe now, and the Netherlands has lots of campaigns as well. And yeah, it's just been very, yeah, like figuring it out as you go and learning from each other and learning from mistakes. And yeah, what publicity works and what doesn't, because a big part of the strategy as well is kind of just getting people talking. So even if you have a vote that doesn't necessarily go very well, like just having the conversation is useful. I remember watching it was like a kind of talk show in the UK, and I can't remember what they were talking about. I don't think it was about our campaign, but it was talking about veganism, and it was someone who like wasn't vegan, wasn't involved, wasn't an activist or anything, but he was like they were talking about it, and this man found himself defending it, and just like on national television, just saying how like in the like people are arguing against it now, like in the future they're going to realize that they're wrong, was kind of the point he was making. Like yeah, and it was just really nice to see someone who wasn't involved at all but was defending it, and that's kind of what we hope with creating when we kind of become active in universities. And that means that I remember when the vote happened in Cambridge, there was so much discussion, and like people knew I was involved, so I had people who didn't know me very well would come and talk to me about it. And then but then also that means that there's loads of other people just having conversations about it, and then just kind of spreading the awareness. And like you say, there'll be plenty of conversations where it's just people disparaging it, but then also for every conversation like that, there'll be something where someone's defending it, who wasn't involved in the first place and thinking more about it.
You have to plant a lot of seeds, I think, in people's consciousness because if you don't believe it's actually possible for you, it's really hard to take it seriously, right? If you think, okay, well, I don't see anything on the menu here, and when I go to my grandmother's, what's she going to say? And when I was traveling, I had to live out of a vending machine because I didn't have any money for restaurants. So, like, how is it possible for me as a young person to eat that way, to live that way, to make those sorts of choices? And so, with this coordination, it strikes me that there are you hear what the pushback is, you hear what the reasons people say, nice idea, but impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I'm sure a lot of young people say that to you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think even the people who started plant-based universities didn't think it was necessarily possible, possible in terms of the trends making these votes happen. And but yeah, I think a big part, so kind of the focus of plant-based universities is it's about institutional change rather than individual change. So we kind of say it doesn't really matter what the individuals are eating, it's just about the institution providing food that is sustainable and in line with their own research. And so yeah, a big part of that is just making the most and obviously it affects the individuals, because then if you put more plant-based options out, then people are going to be more likely to take those. There's a lot of research at the moment around the best way to increase uptake of plant-based meals, even among people that aren't vegan. And the best thing you can do is increase the number of options, because obviously if there's only one plant-based option, then you're kind of inclined to maybe a more kind of sustainable meal, but you just don't like the vegan option that day, then you're not going to eat it. Whereas if there's two, then it's more likely, it's twice as likely you're going to like it. At the canteen in my college, there'll always be 4 options, and generally it's kind of one plant-based, one vegetarian, one meat, one fish. But like if it were just 2 plant-based, 1 vegetarian, 1 meat or fish, then that would just, that's just much more likely that you're someone who isn't vegan, but they might not even be thinking about that. They might just think, oh, I like the sound of that. Like, for example, when they have vegan burgers, that's often really popular. The vegans know how to spot the label, but other people just kind of see a burger and like, oh, I'll have that.
So this is very interesting, because the point of your group's positioning is for most of us, it's been a personal change. The focus has been on making personal choices, personal change, and trying to figure out how we make that work. And this option is to use the cachet and the expertise of intellectual achievement and science and research, and making structural change that makes it more possible for the individuals who work and live there.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think although kind of individuals, like the world is made up of like billions of individuals, and enough changing does kind of bring change, you do need, like, to make things more accessible, there needs to be kind of more of a kind of a better kind of overall understanding of it. I think like for example, if you're an athlete and you need, so I row for my college at Cambridge, and I'm quite tall, and so I do eat quite a lot, and often vegan options in kind of like canteens just aren't, there's not like a high protein one, or like it's just a salad or something. And so say someone who's an athlete and isn't vegan, they might just think, oh, well, I can't be vegan because there's never enough, the meals are never filling enough for me, and I work out a lot and I need that energy. Whereas if the institution starts to kind of tackle that misconception by just providing meals that are filling, this could then like kind of lead into also individual change. Like if someone's just eating more, like they just kind of see that it's possible, rather than thinking, oh, well, I'm different, so I can't be vegan for these reasons. In general, I think switching to a plant-based catering at universities is better for accessibility, because you remove like 4 of the major allergens, like fish, milk, eggs, shellfish. And so that will mean, so say someone has a milk and a gluten allergy, suddenly they can now just, the gluten-free option is now available to them. Whereas if they had beforehand, if it weren't vegan and the gluten option had milk in it, then they just can't have it. So I think it does improve accessibility.
So what can we learn as individuals who aren't part of a UK university? We aren't part of a university program. What do you think that we can do out in the world to support the mission of somebody like you at plant-based Cambridge, plant-based universities, or to support community groups that coalesce around us? What can we do?
So I think one of the kind of key things that I've kind of realized with kind of plant-based universities and just sort of these sort of campaigns in general is no one asks you to do it. You just kind of see what needs to be done, and you can just do it in most cases. Like the people who started plant-based universities didn't have experience doing this already. They just started it, and it could have just crashed and burned immediately. And maybe people have tried it before and it has. But like eventually these like just in your community, like if you think, I think especially British people, we have a tendency to complain about things rather than actually kind of doing things. And it's, so you will kind of say, oh, just kind of every time you go to your hall, you're kind of like your dinner hall, your kind of canteen, you're just kind of think, oh, there's the plant-based options here are rubbish, and just kind of complain about every time. But you can actually do something about that. You can either start by contacting the catering managers, or you can kind of talk to other people. And like, if you want to take it from like an environmental stance, and like say this is at your place of work or something, and you can, and most workplaces will have some kind of environmental strategy these days, or have like some vague kind of, we need to be being sustainable, and you can like cite these things as reasons as to like, here's another, like you can say, oh, you're doing, like say you're using hand dryers rather than hand towels because that's wasteful or something. And you can kind of say, oh, you're doing that and that's great, but also we could start, here's another kind of big impact thing, and kind of cite the data. And yeah, and I think it's important, like even in like my work in like climate science, I think you kind of realize that a lot of people aren't actually aware of how damaging like animal agriculture is for the environment. Like I think people kind of vaguely know it is, but they don't realize that it's like 20% of your carbon footprint. It's like a lot bigger than people think. And I think once people start to learn this, and it wouldn't be an overnight change, but like you say, you plant the seeds of like people realizing these things. And yeah, I guess the point I'm making is you can make these changes. You always need people to start this. Like plant-based universities were started by a group of people and it's a lot of work to do by yourself. But it's important to remember that it is possible, and like someone might just see what you're doing and be inspired by it. Your impact is bigger than you think it is.
I think our impact is so much bigger than we think it is. I think we tend to diminish what we think, oh, I'm one person or nobody really agrees with me. Even if you live in a family where nobody else is vegan, just by showing up and having, a happy life as a vegan, I think you're tremendously influential. So the conversations, though, I think what you're saying is it's these conversations, just having this out in the atmosphere that there are choices. And I know in my life, if I'm traveling, I have very little. I was just in the UK. I was in Scotland, in Glasgow, Chester, and London. When I travel through a place, I can ask, I can do my homework, I can call ahead, but I have very little recourse. So if one place I showed up in Glasgow, I had told them, and then when we got there, they were like, "Oh, sorry, all the vegetables are already made with butter." Okay, so they basically just told me to, on your bike. so,
Yeah.
so I have no recourse there. However, in the places where I live, I can keep asking. I can say, "Oh, that was great, but it would be super if I could also do this." Or do you think that would ever be possible? Where you show up every day, the people you're around every day, you can continue to have the conversations and take advantage of the fact that people probably want your business. And even if you're an annoying vegan, they still probably want your money.
Yeah. There's this kind of van in Cambridge that people go to for food after nights out. And I know the only vegan option they have is chips, but I ask every time because like I don't know if they recognize me and just know it's the same person every time, but it just gives the impression that that they should have more. The same with anything. I think we do as vegans often think, oh, I don't want to be too much of a nuisance and be the stereotype of an annoying vegan. But like if people don't realize there's a vegan there, like they're not going to cater for them. Like where I am here at the Netherlands at the moment, the university I was at, they often the group I'm kind of with that often like do cakes on it's once a month, and there's only actually one that I've been here for. But I just asked if there's anything vegan, and she was like, "Oh no, there isn't, but there will be next time."
And there's also the concept of the vegan veto, where my family, even if I'm the only vegan, they're not going to take me someplace that doesn't have. They're not going to come with me, so they lose. They lose the other 5 to 12 people in the family, if even if it's only I that am vegan.
Yeah, in the UK, I've kind of taken it for granted that it's quite. I've always found maybe it's a bit different when you're in kind of Glasgow, but definitely in the south of England, it's very hard to find somewhere that doesn't have a vegan option. If you just pick somewhere randomly, there will be it might be rubbish, but there'll be like a dry burger you could have at least.
I don't think it was a Glasgow issue. I think it was a particular to this restaurant.
Okay. Yeah, no, Glasgow I would expect would have in general.
Mostly fabulous there. But yeah.
But no, because that's so I was in Spain in the summer and in Barcelona, and it was, if you did just randomly pick a restaurant, there often wouldn't be anything vegan, but there was plenty of vegan restaurants around. You just had to, I have the Happy Cow app. So that's just a very good way of finding vegan. And there were so many in Barcelona, but it was just the case that if you just randomly picked a restaurant, it might not have vegan options. But then the one time that did happen to me, I just asked, and they were able to just change one of the vegetarian options, so it was vegan.
And that's again your conversation, your words, just the request, a polite request is very often the most powerful thing you can do.
Yeah, because you're probably not the only person that's going to be. You're not going to do that, and the more kind of vegans that do that and say that in these restaurants, they eventually put a vegan option on the menu.
Yeah. William Smith, thank you so much for coming. Is there anything else you want us to know about how we can follow vegan plant-based universities or plant-based Cambridge? Is there a way that we can play along at home?
Yeah, you can. We're on all kind of social media if you want to just keep up with it. So there are actually 2 campaigns in the US, but I can't for the life of me remember which universities they're at. But that will be something that you can Google and find out as well. Maybe I probably should have done beforehand.
No, well, that's fine. We'll put that. We'll make sure that we put that in the show notes for people, and I'll put it in the outro for this episode. And what about Australia and Canada? Are you aware of any?
Not of. There isn't plant-based unis campaigns, but there's I'm sure there's people who maybe do similar things. I know some vegans in Australia.
Yeah, me too.
So like, I'm sure like, yeah, if you, like I say, like it does like we are like there's only a quite small kind of core team that run plant-based universities, so that and they are stretched quite thin. So I don't think they have the capacity to also coordinate Australia. But if you want to, or Canada or the US, but if people want to start similar things there and want advice, I'm sure you can arrange a Zoom call with one of the
I'm sure you're right. I'm
yeah.
sure you're right. People would love to show what works and what doesn't work. Before I let you go, what is something from your point of view as a campaigner with Plant-Based Cambridge, or just personally, what doesn't work? What is a strategy to just say, you know what, put that under your hat. Don't try that one.
It's a good question. I've already mentioned that there's kind of top-down change. Like it can work in some instances, but I think you have to bring people with you. It's all these pyramid structures, and there's more people at the bottom, and you got to bring people with you, or people will just be angry and not understand it. And communicating it adequately as well, making sure people know what you're doing and why you're doing it, and kind of I think it's quite a lot really. People as well, kind of not just writing people off as like another part of the plant. But so often farmers can kind of take issue with vegans, right? But we're kind of big on communicating, like reaching out to these groups before, like say we're going to have one of our votes and we think there's a group that might disagree with us, like in the meeting, we'll reach out to them beforehand. And instead of just kind of trying to argue with them and have a fight with them in the meeting, we'll actually try and get them on, like do our best to get them on board. Yeah, not just accepting that you have enemies, kind of anyone can be an ally, I think.
I think that is a really important one. One wasn't immediately coming to my mind at all. That sometimes people have to hear an idea hundreds of times before they can lean into it in any way.
No, exactly. Like I say, one of my biggest regrets from going vegan is not doing it sooner. Like it took me a long time of kind of hearing it. And then you have to kind of understand it in your own words, I think, and you have to have lots of people explain it to you before that kind of clicks and you get that. And yeah, I think that it's like the environmental impact stuff. There's so many different ways of explaining it, and you just have to kind of someone will eventually resonate with someone, and then they'll kind of go, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, and then that kind of plants a seed, and they'll hear more things, and then they'll be more receptive to things in future. But yeah, the
penny drops at a certain point. I mean, I didn't go vegan until I was 56, so it was a lot of pennies dropping before it worked for me. William Smith, thank you so much for coming and telling us a little bit about Plant-Based Cambridge, plant-based universities, and I think inspiring us how all of us in our communities can try different options to make a big change.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
William Smith is just one of the campaigners for plant-based universities at Cambridge University, and I'm hoping that many of you found this hopeful, knowing that there are many others out there working and learning and leading the way towards realistic solutions. And I hope, like myself, maybe you also thought a tiny bit of where we can have more conversations ourselves, how we can educate ourselves, because the answers, the solutions, they're just science, aren't they? It's inspiring to see how student-led initiatives like Plant-Based Cambridge are making waves and influencing institutional policies and learning from both what doesn't work as well as what does. What works? Conversation. Communicating the reasons, asking institutions for specific things, not just expecting them to figure it out. Reaching out from the bottom up and really believing that anyone and everyone can be an ally. If you're interested in learning more about plant-based universities or getting involved with similar initiatives in your area, check out our show notes for links and resources. And remember what William shared. Moving away from animal products is one of the easiest and most impactful choices you can make. And you can make it anytime. Even if you aren't vegan, even if you aren't plant-based. You can start today to veg your best. Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.